Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast and welcome to 2026, which comes with a lot of updates. So, we're going to try to be brief and give you as much information as possible. So, number one, as of for me, especially, I would like to make sure that everybody's and know that our minimum wage in New York City and the rest of New York State has gone up. So New York City, Long Island, and Westchester is now up to $17 an hour, and the rest of New York State is $16 an hour. And if you have any specific industries that you know are different, really, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll help you and guide you through this process. And the other one that I'm going to need Irene's help as well, because I know it's really complicated. It's now different buckets. It's the Earned Safe and Sick Time Act. And so right now in New York City, we have we need to provide 40 to 56 hours of paid safe and sick leave under this act. And it really depends on the employer size. However, now there's an additional separate bank of 32 hours of unpaid safe and sick leave. So I really would like Irene to take us through these buckets so we understand of all the necessary adjustments that we need to make.
Hi, thank you, Jane. Hi, everyone. So there have been a lot of expansions to the paid sick leave and now also an unpaid sick leave carve out as well. So a lot to go through and a lot to incorporate into policies. And although some have already taken effect, we've talked about the paid prenatal leave, those 20 hours. It's very important that you always give prior notice. And because we're going to be talking about general paid leave and sick leave, I will group this one in together. So, in the event that there's still a company that has not implemented that paid prenatal leave, please make sure that it is implemented together with all of these updates. There have been quite a few updates. Again, that always signals to us that that means that there will be subsequent checks and someone will be reviewing, someone being, and likely auditors perhaps at Division of Consumer Affairs. It could be Department of Labor. We're not really sure who will have jurisdiction over this, but the most important part is we want to make sure everyone is in compliance, and in compliance on time when all of these acts take effect. So the first one that I'd like to talk about is that the New York City Earned Safe and Sick Time Act. That's quite a lot in there.
Mhm.
Will
It
now
really
require
is.
will now require, that's I think why we shorten it to just sick leave, which will differentiate between state, city, federal. So I'll try to use all the words in it at once. But I wanted to mention that there's now a requirement that New York City employers provide 32 hours of unpaid safe and sick leave. And this is very important because everyone is pretty familiar with the 40 hours if you're an employer with less than 100 employees, and the 56 hours of paid leave if you're an employer with more than 100 employees. This is separate. This is an additional 32 hours, but these are unpaid hours. They're essentially given to the employee to take for safe and sick leave with job protection, but the employer is not obligated to pay for those times. And that's why it's very important that a separate bucket is created for these, and a separate way of tracking this on the payroll is seen. Because if you put it together and you group it together with the general sick leave, it's going to be very difficult to differentiate how the required paid sick leave is different from this one. So not only do you want this in your policies, but you also want to separate them out, especially on any wage statements like a pay stub. Um, Additionally, it's important that any policies and notices go into effect way before the effective date. So this additional expansion will take effect on February 22nd of 2026. It's our recommendation that any updated policies already in place no later than February 1st, so that the employees have notice of this, but also so that if you're using um, a payroll provider for the pay stubs, there's already a coding and all of that is decided beforehand. And the reminder, I know we started talking a little bit about that paid prenatal leave. I bring it
Mhm.
up again because as we were doing some year-end calls in preparation for the new year, um, some clients that are rather new to our practice that are updating policies for that first time, it seems like there was not a lot of information about this paid prenatal leave coming out to them, and it was missed. And so, of course, there was a big panic, and we did see that quite a lot across the board, um, from again some of the clients that were internally managing and handling any employment compliance. So if this was missed on the radar, it's really important. It's already been in effect for a number of months. So it's very important that you put that in your policies, you update it immediately. And again, you create a separate coding and a separate bucket for that as well. And that's going to be 20 hours of the paid prenatal leave over a 52-week period. So they also, I want to add a little more to the leave in New York City. They've also expanded on permissible uses. It was already rather broad what they could be used for, but now they've expanded it further. So, uh, first thing that comes to mind, and it seems like they just expanded on the definition, but the first thing, of course, is caregiving. So it's employees who qualify as caregivers. Um, they can use the additional time now for care of a minor child, um, but it could also be for anyone that is a recipient of their care, even if it's somebody that is under a temporary disability that they provide care for. It could be for any it could be also used for any proceedings, legal proceedings that may be needed and time needed to take for any legal proceedings for purposes of benefits or housing. And this is probably not one that comes to mind immediately when you think of the of sick leave as a general concept. But again, that more so goes towards that longer definition, longer title,
Mhm.
because it includes the safe leave part of it as well. And they want to make sure that if anybody needs that time to advocate for housing, their housing rights, their benefits rights, they can actually use that time for it as well. And then two additional categories. You may also use that if they were a victim of workplace violence, um, and also if a family member of theirs was a victim of workplace violence. And then lastly, for any public disasters. And then there's a few definitions here. I don't want to bore everybody with those, but there are a few definitions of what public disasters are defined by. It's really important that these specific categories and exact wording is used in the policies, because whenever there's an expansion that covers certain time that may not necessarily immediately come to mind, we want to make sure that there's not going to be any confusion, that an employee thought that they could take this time, and then the employer denies it, perhaps incorrectly, because the definition was written incorrectly. So we definitely want to make sure that everyone's using the exact wording from the law. And when they expand it to that exact wording there as well. And there's one additional update as well. There was surprisingly, because that is pretty surprising for New York, typically we see expansion of employee rights and narrowing of employer rights. And here we actually have narrowing of the Temporary Schedule Change Act. Also, starting on February 22nd, 2026, employers will no longer be required to grant employees temporary schedule change requests. And of course, there are certain limitations here as well. Um, and you cannot retaliate still against somebody from making that request, but now it's more narrow for employee rights of when they're allowed to request and be granted that temporary schedule change. So I know that in a lot of uh, hospitality industries and various other industries they're very tied to a certain schedule. This has been a big problem for a number of years, these unexpected schedule changes. So this is going to be something very beneficial. But again, it's very important that it's in policies in order for it to be used. So I know that a lot of information, a few new dates, some new definitions, and I'm sure a lot of information that may need to be reviewed, industry specific, or depending on
Size of the company, right?
specific, exactly, the size of the company for hours and the needs of the company. So we invite everyone to please reach out to Jane and I um, just to revisit this and do so ahead of time and ahead of the necessary implementation so that you have all those policies down
Yes,
before then.
definitely. Thank you so much for this. This is very helpful.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.